Republicans in the United States, everybody from Republican politicians to conservative talking heads, are finally addressing one of the biggest issues facing the United States today. But it's not the deplorable conditions of the migrants on the southern border. It's not climate change. It's not the rising cost of health care and college. Nope. Conservatives right now are raising holy hell about a pair of shoes. Conservatives, from Ted Cruz to Mitch McConnell to weirdos all over Twitter, Fox News devoted multiple segments to it all throughout Tuesday. They are ranting and raving about the fact that Nike is not going to be producing a pair of shoes featuring the Betty Ross flag on the back of them. And according to reports, the reason they're not going to produce this shoe is because Colin Kaepernick, who has a sponsorship deal with Nike, told the organization that, hey, that flag represents a pretty crappy time in U.S. history for very obvious reasons. Oh, and not to mention the fact that that flag has now been co-opted by white nationalist organizations. Big story in Rolling Stone explaining how over the years these groups filled with hate have actually been using that flag as their symbol as a kind of metaphor for returning the United States to that time when only white people had rights. So yeah, probably not a good idea to slap that on the back of a sneaker. But nonetheless, Republicans have renewed their calls to boycott Nike, which I thought they already were boycotting Nike after they did agree last year to hire Colin Kaepernick as their spokesperson. But I guess now we're in a super boycott, which means you doubly cannot buy Nike shoes if, of course, you love America. Because according to the Republicans, that's what this is all about. It's about who loves America the most, and clearly Colin Kaepernick doesn't. Here is what one conservative, popular on Twitter, Pastor Greg Locke. Here is a little video he posted about how much he is pissed off about this damn pair of shoes. Here it is.
Hey guys, Pastor Greg Locke here. So the number one trend in the world right now is the fact that Nike has compromised and pulled their new shoes for the 4th of July because they have a Betsy Ross American flag on the back of them because of all people, Colin Kaepernick complained as a spokesman. Oh my goodness, I'm offended. Colin Kaepernick, dude, you're offended by everything. And then people want to hail him as a hero. Oh, Colin Kaepernick's a hero. That's like saying Big Bird should be an Avenger. He's not a hero. He's not fighting for the rights of black people. He's causing more trouble for black people than anybody else on the face of the planet. That's a hands down fact. The guy's the most flaming liberal leftist non-American in the world. He should just buy a jumbo jet ticket and fly somewhere else if he hates America so much. Shame on you, Nike. Shame on you for siding with an anti-American fool. Yes, I said it. This is ridiculous.
Well, there you have it, folks. If you don't support stomping on the Betsy Ross flag every time you take a step, you're somehow un-American, according to that whack job there. Here's the truth. According to the U.S. flag code, you are not supposed to wear the American flag as clothing or on your clothing at all whatsoever, period, end of story. So Nike not producing these shoes with the Betsy Ross flag on the back is actually more patriotic than the weirdos saying that we should have it on our shoes. But you've got everybody from Ted Cruz saying, well, I'm never going to wear a pair of Nikes again. I've been wearing them since I was a kid. Mitch McConnell tweeted out, hell, I'll be the one to buy the first pair of Nike. Just please make these shoes. You have other Republicans. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey said his state is going to pull all incentives they have for Nike in the state. Republicans are overreacting to a pair of shoes, folks. And again, most other news outlets in this country right now are focusing on the deplorable conditions that we've learned about the migrants along our southern border. You know, the real issues, the thing that actually matter, humanitarian issues. And meanwhile, conservatives, big and small alike, are out there ranting and raving and having hissy fits over a pair of shoes. Thanks for watching, everybody. And don't forget, if you like what you see here,
big story tonight, political fireworks over a Betsy Ross flag design on a 4th of July shoe.
Nike announcing it is pulling its new Air Max USA 1s before putting them on the shelf. The shoes feature a flag, which Nike says could be offensive to some and distract from the holiday. Governor Doug Ducey firing back with an early morning tweet storm lashing out at Nike.
Team 12's Michael Doudna is here in studio with us. And Michael, put politics aside, what's the impact here for Arizona?
Yeah, in just 24 hours, caught up all this is that the city of Goodyear approved a $2 million incentive plan for a Nike facility to open there, hoping to bring in more money to Goodyear here in the valley. Then Nike decided to pull their shoes, and now the governor says he's pulling back state funds, part of the incentive package for Nike, arguing our economy is strong enough without them.
The city of Goodyear has found itself in the middle of a difficult situation.
In less than 24 hours, what seemed like a done deal between Goodyear and Nike came back into question. On Monday, Goodyear City Council unanimously approving $2 million in incentives to attract what they expected would be more than $184 million in Nike investment.
All right, ladies, let's give up our heels.
The exchange from heels to sneakers would not be smooth. Monday night, Nike announcing it would pull this shoe with Betsy Ross's flag on the back before it ever reached the shelves. The Wall Street Journal reporting Colin Kaepernick raised the concern over the colonial-era flag, that it could remind some of slavery and its occasional use by some white supremacists.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
Governor Ducey then lambasting the company in a 9-tweet thread, starting with, quote, "It was supposed to be a good day in Arizona," and continues saying he was embarrassed for the company, saying it bowed to the current onslaught of political correctness and historical revisionism, and ordering around $1 million of discretionary incentives to be taken away from Nike. However, Goodyear says even with the controversy swirling, it will honor its commitment made Monday night.
This deal is expected to bring more than 500 jobs.
And since we're talking about money, here are the facts. $1 million loss in incentives is almost nothing. Last year, Nike generated almost $16 billion in profits, while Arizona in 2016 generated $262 billion in GDP, making this $1 million dispute practically chump change. Now, a spokeswoman for Goodyear tells us they have not heard about any changes from Nike and expect the deal with Nike to move forward. Guys, back over to you.
All right, Michael, thank you.
John Bolton was not there yesterday at the DMZ. He was in Mongolia, but Ivanka Trump was there, the White House advisor, of course, the president's daughter. Ivanka was at her father's side, actually, for several meetings at the G20. And in a video posted by the French government, Ivanka is seen trying to make conversation with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, French President Emmanuel Macron, and IMF Chairwoman Christine Lagarde, as well as British Prime Minister Theresa May.
Social justice. It's all, yeah. As soon as you start talking about the economic aspect of it, though. Yeah.
Recently, I've been studying the Constitution. It's been the backbone of our nation for more than 200 years, and I have to say, it's dull as Luckily, it can be changed and rewritten, and I think it's time to update it for today's modern world. And that's what I pledge to do in our new segment, Amending the Amendments. First, let me fix some obvious problems with the Constitution. I just drew a penis. A lot of it doesn't even make sense. For instance, the 18th Amendment established prohibition, but the 21st Amendment repealed it. That sounds like something a drunk would do. You quit drinking and then you're back on it. I'm surprised the 22nd Amendment wasn't on, just quitting again. This time for good. Also, I probably owe the 19th Amendment an apology. We don't need two amendments that cancel each other out, so get rid of both of them. See, we're making progress already. Okay, now let's make some changes. Start with the First Amendment. That's a big one. Freedom of speech. Now, I'm all for freedom of speech, but for everyone. Like, really, no matter what? Like, what about internet comments? Like, when they wrote the Constitution, we didn't have the internet. Back then, if you wanted to insult someone, it took effort. You'd have to write the comment down on parchment paper, then you'd have to go on horse and deliver it personally, and hopefully the person you were insulting could read. A lot of people couldn't back then. You'd have a guy going, so, and it's like, suck my dick. It says, suck my dick. Jesus, Nathaniel. How can you not read that? I challenge you to a duel. I'm not okay with freedom of anonymous online speech. It's what leads to online bullying, and that affects most teenagers. It's going to make them more likely to hurt themselves. If you're going to make a comment online, put your f***ing name on it. Put your name on it. Right? Like my auntie always said, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. She was an old bitch. But see, I just said that publicly on TV. I owned it. But there's more to the First Amendment than freedom of speech. There's also freedom of religion. Not interested, f*** that off, that's gone. Right? Next, the right to peacefully assemble. Sounds good, but the problem is a lot of peaceful gatherings are shit. They're shit. Like parades. The people in them look bored. The people watching the parade are bored. Parades suck. Unless you involve the gays. So we'll be adding that to the First Amendment. Involve the gays. Imagine how much better Thanksgiving parade will be when the gays get into it. That's put cigarettes out on me back, Elmo. The First Amendment also covers freedom of press, and I'm fine with that. You just need to refine the press part of it, because fake news wasn't a thing in the 1700s. Everyone back then was horrible. What kind of slander could you possibly ruin a person with back then? Breaking news: Thomas Jefferson does not have sex with his slaves. Then Jefferson would have to hold a press conference. The failing colonial times would have you believe that I don't have sex with my own slaves. I do. I bang them like the horny slave owner I am. These lies will not stand. Slave f***ing. So let's see what we've got. Here's the old crappy First Amendment. Let's make the changes. Religion is dumb. You can only say mean things if you put your name on it. Only peacefully assemble if you are actually fun. And all your news has to come from the Jim Jeffries Show. There you go. The new First Amendment. See how easy that was? It took our founding fathers 2 years to agree on the Bill of Rights, and I fixed it in 5 minutes.
A charity worker came to my front door and they were collecting for a homeless shelter, so I gave them a cardboard box. Beggars can't be choosers, am I right? Now listen, this isn't what the show is about at all, but I was briefly going to tell you about a thing that I'm doing at the moment. It means a lot to me, and I was just going to take a moment of your time. I've started a little charity, just a little thing of my own, and it's going great, but I didn't want to put anything up on big screens or put any leaflets out or anything in the programme. I was just going to briefly tell you what the charity that I've set up does, and then if you want to get involved, you could just Google it. But it's not really what the evening's about. The evening's just about having a laugh, but I thought I might just... Sorry, I'm wittering on now. But you could just look it up and Google it if you want to get... You know, I'm just saying, because you could be proactive rather than me sort of forcing it down, because people get bored of that. Okay, what we do is we send obese children to the rainforest. I don't mind you tittering, because we're already seeing fabulous results. And if you want to be part of that, it's feedthetigers.com. Their faces light up. Not the children, obviously, they're fucking petrified. Although it is quite ironically funny seeing them trying to run away. He's a bit late for cardiovascular now. You should have thought of that when you were waddling to Greggs, you fat fuck. I don't want to make a big deal of this, but I recently adopted a newborn African child. He was just £7, plus postage and packing. That's how they get you. If only they'd put holes in that box. And that is the joke, interestingly, that Richard Curtis said was a bit much for the comic relief gig. On the High Street the other day, there was a girl there with a clipboard. She said, "Could you spare a few minutes for cancer research?" I said, "All right, but we're not going to get much done." We could pop into Boots and see if they've got anything. Yeah, I did. I had crisps. Did you see? I had crisps. Jimmy Con Carne crisps. The good people at Walker's for comic relief. They brought out a flavour of my crisps, and it was me and Al Murray and Frank Skinner and Stephen Fry. And then they made these crisps, and every packet they sold, they gave 5 pence to the starving people in Africa. And I said to them, "Why don't you just send them the fucking crisps?" It's got to make more sense, hasn't it? Because they can't be as fussy about the flavours. If you're starving, you're fine, aren't you? Well, these are a bit... Nah, fair enough. Nothing happened in the High Street the other day. You know the charity muggers? You know the ones with the clipboard and the optimism in the High Street? I dodged 2 of the cunts, and the third one got me with what I considered to be an unfair tactic, the backwards walk and talk. So I hadn't stopped, I hadn't made eye contact, and she told me her sad story as she trotted along backwards. And the wording was just perfect for me. She said, "You know how often people die from AIDS?" I said, "I'm not an expert, but I'm guessing just the once." I saw an extraordinary anti-AIDS thing recently. I was in Johannesburg last year doing some gigs, and I saw in Johannesburg this charity had printed a leaflet with everything you need to know about HIV and AIDS, because there's a lot of myths about AIDS in South Africa. So they printed up this leaflet, and because they raised more money than they needed, they decided to attach a condom to every leaflet. Good idea. So they stapled a condom. Genuinely true, the Everest of fuckwittery. I did one of those nude calendars for charity. Yeah, Childline were livid. Have you all seen that incredibly powerful commercial where every time a famous person clicks their fingers, a child dies? I was watching it, I couldn't help thinking, stop clicking your fingers. I went out to dinner last night, I killed 2 kids just getting the bill. You know why they raise all that cash to dig wells in Africa? So when they're finished, they can throw money in and wish for food. I know you think that's offensive, but it's not when you compare it to this. The Make-A-Wish Foundation. Are you all familiar with the fine work the Make-A-Wish Foundation do? Broadly speaking, they make dreams come true for the terminally ill. What could be more worthwhile? They're a great organisation. I thoroughly approve of what they do. My only problem with them is the name. I think they should be forced to change their name. From the Make-A-Wish Foundation to the No Make Another Wish, we can't do anything about that foundation. It costs £165,000 to raise a child to the age of 18 in the UK. That's why I've sponsored one in Africa. It's £1 a week. I do quite a lot of charity shows, and I'm not pretending to be particularly altruistic. I do them because they're really good fun. There's loads of comics come and do a show. There's about 10 of us backstage. We'll hang out together. It's like a little social. And what we do is we dare each other. We dare each other to open with the most inappropriate line possible. And what happens is I tend to win the bet and not get invited back. Which, if you think about it, is a double win, because you don't get paid for those shows. I did a gig for the Aisling Foundation. Does anyone know the Aisling Foundation? No? Well, they're quite a small charity based in London. They're an Irish charity, and what they do is they take Irish builders and navvies that came over in the 1950s and 60s, and these are older guys, they've fallen on hard times. They give them pensions and retirement homes on the west coast of Ireland. And I did a gig for them. I thought it was a great charity. I went out there, I said, "It's lovely to be here supporting the Aisling Foundation. I've got a new slogan for you. Fuck off home, the roads are finished." Apparently they're famous for their sense of humour. Oh no, they're fucking not. I was in London and I saw a homeless guy with a dog on a piece of string. Classic look for a homeless guy. And I was walking by and the homeless guy said, "Could you spare some money for food?" And my friend said, "Eat the dog, then we'll talk." Even I thought that is harsh. I'm joking, I didn't. Truth be told, there was no friend there, I said it. I did a gig for Alzheimer's sufferers. It was brilliant. 2 hours, one joke. I did a gig for Alzheimer's sufferers. Now, I talked about the Make-A-Wish people. Did you all see this upsetting story in the Mirror last year? It was about a 5-year-old boy that needed a new kidney, otherwise he was going to die. And the Mirror ran a 6-week campaign about this, yeah? I'll tell you the good thing before I tell you the funny thing. That 5-year-old boy is now 6. He got the kidney and he made it, thanks in no small part to the Mirror newspaper. Well done them, yeah? But talk about heartbreaking, talk about tugging the heartstrings. Last Christmas, they printed his Christmas list in the paper. And the kidney was on the list. 4th. 4th! There were things he wanted more. Number 3 was a Little Britain DVD. I don't want to sound tight-fisted, but I'd have got him that. There you go, mate, you'll piss yourself. I'll get someone to explain what kidneys do after the show. Of course, the big campaign the last couple of years was Stop Third World Debt. Yeah? What I can't understand is how they're getting into debt in the first place. There's no fucking shops. What idiot Saturday boy's giving a Kalahari Bushman interest-free credit on a stereo? I still can't understand how the third world hasn't consolidated their debts into one easy monthly payment. Surely that's the way forward. They should get in touch with the good people of Ocean Finance. Have you seen those commercials? They're incredible. They take 15 of the ugliest people you've ever seen. And they all say exactly the same thing down the lens, as if it's taking every ounce of their wit to get this simple sentence out. They all say, they made it so easy. They made it so easy. And you're looking at it thinking, well, they kind of fucking had to. If they'd made it complicated, you wouldn't have understood. And if it had been difficult, it would have been a bit like work. And you don't like that, do you? That's how you got into this mess. I got stopped by one of those charity muggers. You know the ones with the clipboard in the high street? And you think, oh, I've dodged him, and then there's another, oh. They work in teams, I don't know how they do it. Anyway, I got stopped, I got cornered. He said, can I have a word about the homeless? I said, certainly. Lazy.
When it comes to the amount of sheer planning, creativity and outright lunacy that goes into them, few crimes rival the high-profile multi-million-dollar heist. And when you consider the colourful characters and criminal masterminds behind these robberies, it's easy to see why these crimes continue to be the subject of constant speculation and fascination. Whether the work of teams of highly trained thieves, lowly bank managers, or even a powerful dictator, here are 10 of the biggest and most bizarre heists and burglaries in history. Number 10. The Great Train Robbery. One of the most famed heists in popular culture, the Great Train Robbery was one of the biggest robberies of all time when it was committed in 1963. The heist took place in Buckinghamshire, England, when a mail train transporting millions of pounds was boarded by a team of 15 robbers. The thieves used a fake signal light to stop the train, and after subduing the workers inside the first 2 carriages, they loaded 120 mail bags containing £2.6 million into some cars that they had hidden near the tracks. The men escaped the scene, but 13 of them were quickly captured following an extensive investigation by Scotland Yard. 2 of the men, Ronnie Biggs and Charlie Wilson, would later escape from prison and flee the country. Wilson was caught 4 years later in Canada, but Biggs famously eluded capture by hiding out in Brazil, and he was only apprehended when he turned himself into the authorities in 2001. Number 9. The Agricultural Bank of China Robbery. 2007's Agricultural Bank of China robbery resulted in the theft of 51 million yuan, roughly $7 million, and it is said to be the biggest robbery in China's history. The scheme started when the bank manager, Ryan Zhaofeng, stole 200,000 yuan from the vault. His unlikely plan was to use the money to buy massive amounts of lottery tickets in the hope of winning a cash prize and then returning the money before it was reported missing. Amazingly, the plan actually worked, and Ren made a huge profit off his gamble even after returning the 200,000. After enlisting the help of another manager, Mao Xiaoying, Ren proceeded to steal nearly 33 million yuan a year or so later, and a month after that another 18 million. In both cases, the men spent nearly all of the money on lottery tickets, but they were only able to recoup 98,000 yuan. As you might expect, the missing money was quickly noticed and reported. Ren and Ma were eventually captured, but very little of the stolen money was ever recovered, thanks to the astronomical amounts that the duo had spent on lottery tickets. And, well, you know, this being China and all, the two men were later executed. Number 8. The Great Brinks Robbery. When it was committed in 1950, the $2.7 million Brinks robbery in Boston, Massachusetts was the biggest heist in American history. Dubbed the crime of the century, the heist was the work of an 11-man gang who used copied keys to gain entry into the Brinks building. Once inside, they made their way into a room where employees were counting money, and after subduing the armed guards, they collected $1.2 million in cash along with another $1.5 million in checks and securities. The gang's plan had been to sit on the money for 6 years, at which point the statute of limitations for armed robbery would have run out, but a police investigation had quickly started turning up suspects. After a few of the men were arrested, the criminals started turning on one another, even going so far as to hire hitmen and attempting drive-by shootings on suspected snitches. Eventually, though, all 11 of the original robbers were found and arrested, and many of them received life sentences. Number 7. The Gardner Museum Art Heist. In the biggest art heist in history, two men dressed as police officers managed to con their way into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston late one night in 1990. Once inside, the men overpowered the few guards on duty, tied them up, and left them in the basement. They then proceeded to steal several pieces of artwork by Rembrandt, Degas, Monet, and Vermeer, along with a few sculptures and historical artifacts. The total haul is valued at $500 million, but both the thieves and the artwork have yet to be found. A number of possible suspects have been considered, from Boston crime boss James Whitey Bulger to the IRA, but no arrests have been made in connection to the case. Enough time has passed that the statute of limitations on the actual heist has passed, leaving the Gardner Museum art heist as one of the most successful and mysterious robberies of all time. Number 6. The Central Bank of Iraq heist. For sheer amount of currency stolen, no robbery compares to the Central Bank of Iraq heist, which is said to have been perpetrated by none other than Saddam Hussein himself. The robbery happened just before the US bombing of Iraq in 2003. In the middle of the night, a small group of men, led by Saddam Hussein's son, went to the central bank with tractor trailers and forcibly withdrew just under $1 billion in cash. Nearly $650 million of this was eventually found stashed in the walls of Hussein's palace by US soldiers. A handwritten note was later discovered linking Saddam and his son to the heist, but just who the other men involved were, or what became of the remaining $350 million, well, it remains a mystery. Number 5. The Baker Street Burglary. The Baker Street burglary took place in London in 1971 when a team of well-equipped thieves tunneled into the Baker Street Bank and stole £3 million worth of cash and valuables from safety deposit boxes. The criminals used a combination of metal cutting tools and explosives to tunnel to the vault from a nearby shop, and even had a lookout positioned on a nearby rooftop. Near the end of the heist, a ham radio operator overheard some of the lookout's radio transmissions and contacted the police, who frantically searched over 700 banks within the area in the hopes of locating the transmission. They were unable to catch the robbers at the time, but nearly 2 years later, a number of men were charged in connection with the robbery, though police believe the true mastermind behind the crime was never captured. Number 4. The Harry Winston heist. One of the most downright brazen robberies in recent memory, the Harry Winston heist, it went down in 2008 when a group of 4 men stormed into one of Paris's most exclusive jewelry stores and made off with $108 million in diamonds. The men were disguised as women and armed with a .357 Magnum and a hand grenade. They quickly herded the employees and customers into a corner and started breaking open display cases, and after filling a suitcase with precious stones, they made their escape. 8 men were later jailed for the robbery. Number 3. The Knightsbridge Security Deposit Robbery. One of the boldest and most successful robberies of all time, the Knightsbridge Security Deposit heist happened in London in 1987 when career criminal Valerio Vizzi and a small group of accomplices armed with guns managed to make off with £60 million in valuables and cash from safe deposit boxes. The thieves got into the vaults by pretending to rent a safe deposit box of their own, and once inside they managed to overpower the employees and the security guards and start breaking into the boxes. They escaped without incident, but a bit of blood left behind at the scene allowed police to trace the robbery back to Vizzi, who was wanted for a large number of robberies in his native Italy. Vizzi's accomplices, they were quickly arrested, but he fled the country and for a time eluded capture. A known playboy and high roller, he was only arrested after he returned to England in an attempt to retrieve his prized Ferrari sports car. Number 2. The Banco Central robbery. Considered to be among the biggest bank heists of all time, the Banco Central robbery took place in 2005 in Fortaleza in Brazil. The robbery was the result of painstaking planning by a small gang of burglars who tunneled over 250 feet to the bank's vault from a nearby property. The robbers used a landscaping business as a front for their operation, an ingenious cover that allowed them to move massive amounts of dirt and rock out of the tunnel without looking suspicious. The tunnel itself was expertly constructed and was said to have sophisticated lighting and even an air conditioning system. After 3 months of digging, the thieves finally broke into the vault and made off with the equivalent of $70 million. Since then, police have made a number of arrests in connection with the burglary and recovered some of the money, but the majority of the suspects and the loot are still at large. Number 1. The Antwerp Diamond Heist. Antwerp, Belgium is one of the diamond capitals of the world, with 80% of the world's diamonds passing through the city before being sold on the market. A number of heists have taken place there, the biggest one being in 2003 when a team of master criminals known as the School of Turin managed to walk away with $100 million in uncut diamonds from the Antwerp Diamond Center vault. For sheer scope, ingenuity, and risk, few robberies will ever measure up to this one. The criminals had been planning the heist for years, and using copied keys and faked security camera footage, they managed to bypass the vault's multi-million-dollar security system. The thieves escaped without incident, but DNA left at the scene allowed them to be tracked to Italy, where most of the gang has been captured. The $100 million in diamonds, meanwhile, it seems to have disappeared for good. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, do give us a thumbs up below, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, if you're looking for more from me, why not check out my other channel called Today I Found Out. You'll find that linked to below. And as always, thank you for watching. There's no more iconic scene in Western movies than the good old-fashioned pistol duel, where the lawman and the outlaw meet at high noon to see who's faster on the draw. In actuality, this kind of thing very rarely occurred, and the true-life Western stories like Wild Bill Hickok being shot in the back while playing cards tell a much more gruesome and less gallant tale. Still, there's no denying that among the bandits and lawmen of the day, there were a number of larger-than-life gunfighters whose exploits helped pave a bloody path for the characters that would later populate Western movies and dime novels. The following are 10 of the most famous and downright deadly of these Old West gunslingers. Number 10. Ben Thompson. Ben Thompson was a gambler, a gunfighter, and sometimes a lawman who rubbed shoulders with some of the most famous figures of the Old West. He started his criminal career at the age of 17 when he stabbed and killed a fellow gambler whom he accused of cheating him at cards. Thompson was known for being lightning fast on the draw and gained a reputation as a gunfighter after killing 2 men in a shootout on Christmas Eve of 1876. Wanting to escape that reputation, he took a job as the city marshal of Austin, Texas, but he was forced to resign when he killed a local theater owner named Jack Harris during an argument. Thompson was himself killed in 1884 along with gunfighter King Fisher when friends of Harris ambushed the two and gunned them down while they were watching a performance at an opera house. Number 9. Wyatt Earp. Famed lawman Wyatt Earp is perhaps the most storied figure of the Old West, but he was also an accomplished gunslinger who was greatly feared by the bandits of the time. Earp had a varied career that saw him